You lift heavy, but are you strong where it really counts? In this video today, I'm going to be detailing the 10 strength standards that you should be chasing to prove you're rugby ready. These aren't your typical gym flexes, they're athletic standards that translate over to strength, explosive power, and robustness on the pitch where it matters most. Let's get into it. Now, most athletes out there can dominate the back squat and the bench press, but if that's all you train, you're a powerlifter. And can you even call yourself rugby ready? Why is that? Well, what you need to realize is that rugby and athletic movements in general are very, very chaotic. You do not dictate where you need to display force from. You are forced into these positions, and your body needs to be able to tolerate with being in those positions if you want to translate that strength into gym-based performances. And that's what this video is about. It's giving you a comprehensive and complex movement standard guide that you can follow if you want to build strength through a variety of different angles. And just so you know, this isn't theory. I've lived this myself and I've fallen into this trap. I have squatted 600 pounds, I have benched 4 plates, and I have been that powerlifter. And what I'm about to share with you isn't just based on my journey of trying to build strength where it matters most. We have worked with over 300 athletes at the Strength Solution, helping them smash PRs across these lifts, and that is what has helped them accelerate their performances on the pitch. And I know they can for you too. First up, we have the squat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Not another back squat, but no. Today, we are going to be looking at the front squat. And the front squat, in my opinion, is the most important variation that you need in your program as an athlete. Because the reality is, you can cheat a back squat, you can fold over, you can access those glutes and hamstrings, and you don't actually get much knee bend, but a front squat forces you to use the right technique. Because the load is placed on the front of your body, if you fall over, that bar drops off. So you need to maintain a nice upright torso. You need to focus on getting a lot of deep knee bend, and you need a strong core to keep that position throughout the whole movement as you add on weight. And because of those reasons, the front squat has been correlated in the research to be a better predictor of sprint times and jump height because of the angles found in it so closely relate to that of sprinting. And I hear you people crying behind your laptop screen saying, Joel, I can't get into position because of my mobility. I just fold over like a cheap deck chair. You are not alone. This is a common fault. But good news for you, you can use straps to take away that mobility requirement. This way, you can get that bar where you need it, use these to keep that torso upright and nail your squat pattern. So now you've got no excuse because you can squat while you're working on your mobility, and this is the number that you should be chasing for. You should be chasing for 85% of your best back squat in the front squat, and that is a good strength ratio that you need to hit on our first exercise. So the second exercise on the list is the overhead press. And if your overhead press is lagging, you're not just weak, you're vulnerable. Why is that? Well, what you've got to realize is that rugby is predominantly an overhead sport. The majority of the actions that you require your shoulder to do is in that overhead position. Think tackling. You're in that overhead position. So you need to start to build strength in that position. Line out lifting is in the overhead press position. You need to build strength in that pattern. And most of the things that you do, fending in the overhead press pattern, I don't need to give you any more examples. This is something that you need in your program and you need to get strong. But sadly, this is one of the most neglected pressing angles. And if you do press it, you may just grab some 5s, load it on and do a high rep set. This is a strength building movement. You need to treat it with the same oomph that you do your bench press. So what's the standard on this one? Well, we want to try and aim for 72% of your best bench press in the overhead press pattern. This is a strict press. It's not a push press. We want to make sure that this movement is coming from the upper body, not the lower. Now, while you're building your overhead press with the bar, we recommend doing this twice a week to accelerate your progress. And the favorite accessory movement that we use is the neutral grip dumbbell overhead press. The goal here should be to hit 21% of your best bench press for 8 reps. If you're not, that's a standard you can chase on the assistance exercises while you gun down the 72% on your overhead press. But don't neglect this angle. So number 3 on the list is the single leg squat or the Bulgarian split squat, whatever you want to call it. And this is another exercise where I see a lot of you fall into the same trap that a lot of people do. Overshooting their primary exercise, their squat and bench, but undershooting their accessories. This isn't an accessory movement. This is a must for athletes. So when you're doing these, ditch the 2.5 kilo dumbbells and load this heavy. So the standard that we're aiming for here is the back rack single leg squat being 75% of your best back squat for 5 reps. So one of the things that actually kills your ability to load this and the effectiveness of the exercise is how high you pop the bench. You use one of the normal benches at the gym, which means that you need massive amounts of hip flexibility to actually get down and touch your knee on the floor, which means that it kills the purpose of the exercise because you don't actually train the joint angles that we want from it. This is one of the best exercises for hammering the mid-range, so ditch the bench and do this instead. You essentially want to use something that lines up with your tibial tuberosity, which is this bony part here. That means that when you get into these positions, you don't need as much room on this back hip, which means we can load this front leg, load the glutes, load the muscles that we want to load, and get the effectiveness out the exercise. So the fourth exercise on the list, and one that I know you may be thinking, I've been avoiding that recently because you've heard it's dangerous, but what you need to realize when it comes to athletic performance, the exercises with the greatest injury risk normally have the biggest performance benefit: sprinting, deadlifting, and the dip. Now, there's only 3 ways that injuries occur, and these are the mistakes that I see people make with dips, which mean that they're just not prepared to do the work. And that is they do too much, too soon, too frequently. If you ignore any of those rules, then yes, you may be willing to pick up an injury in an exercise like this, because the goal of the dip isn't to just stay in this top part, it's to work through that full range and get that shoulder below the elbow, which, if you're not prepared for it, is a dangerous exercise. So if you look at the dip and you think, that's a little bit too far outside my capability right now, the goal is to be able to get there. One of the best exercises that we use to help our athletes build up to that strength standard is the decline rotating dumbbell grip bench press, where as we come down, we want to focus on fully rotating and getting a similar angle to what we would the dip. And this is going to be a perfect way to start to introduce that shoulder to the positions that we need to get strong in for the dip itself. So when you have actually built up to a point where you can perform dips safely, they're in your program and there's something that you can start to look to progress. The goal of these is to hit 117% of your best bench press on the dip. Remember, this is a full range exercise. Just because the weight's heavier, we don't half rep. We come all the way down because strength is gained in the range it's trained, and that should be your priority when using dips. So exercise number 5 on the list is going to be another one of those lifts that you look at and say, well, I've heard coaches say that they don't do this because of the risk to reward ratio. But what you need to realize, and what those coaches need to realize, is that the biggest risk as an athlete comes from playing your sport. The weight room is a relatively safe place in comparison to the pitch when you don't fuck up the rules that we outlined in the last one of doing too much, too soon, too frequently. And that is why the deadlift is number 5. Now, the goal of the deadlift is to build up to 125% of your best back squat on the deadlift. And this is going to be an absolutely vital exercise to build a strong posterior chain, your glutes, your hamstring, your spinal erectors, which is going to turn you into an absolute animal on the pitch if you get strength through here. Now, one of the common errors that I see with the deadlift is rounding through the spine. Now, this isn't inherently dangerous for itself as long as you're adapted to be able to do that. But remember, the goal as an athlete is to use this exercise to build a strong posterior chain, the glutes, the hamstring specifically. So we want to make sure that we keep that form tight throughout this and focus on that good hinge mechanics without losing that spinal position, because that is going to build strength that matters most, that carries over to the activities like sprinting, like jumping, which you're going to need to do frequently on the pitch. Now, I know I teased you about the 6 exercises on this list and about how it's one of the most important things you can do as an athlete. And that is because the 6 exercise on this list is the clean. Now, this is going to be the first of our explosive strength movements. And these are a little bit different to the movements that we've just listed out, because the goal here is, yes, to build strength, because we know that that is going to impact how much we clean. But one of the things that this is looking at that the others don't necessarily is how fast we can use this force. And this is what we call a change in impulse. And that is how much force we can generate in a unit of time. And that is why the clean is something that I think all rugby athletes should be doing, not just because of that impulse as well, but because of the other benefits that the clean has had. And we've done a full video on this, so if you want to check that out somewhere on the screen, we will walk through about why the clean is useful for athletes and how you can include it in your training. But the goal here is to make sure that we are lifting 85% of our best front squat. And you will see that I did the power clean there. That is not the standard for this. This clean that we're looking at to compare to is our full clean. So the goal of this is to make sure that we catch it in that deep front squat position, which we spoke about being so vital as the first exercise on this list. If you're not using this in your training, you are missing out on a whole host of performance benefits. So the 7th exercise on our list rounds out our explosive strength exercises and what we call our technical coordination movements, and that is the snatch. Now, if you think about the shoulders being a valuable thing that we need to build robustness in for rugby players, I think the snatch does that perfectly, because what you need to realize is that the snatch is going to prepare your shoulders for high speeds in deep joint positions under high load. So this makes it a very valuable exercise for contact athletes that want to strengthen their shoulder. But you won't see this in everyone's gym program that we coach, purely because it is quite a technically demanding position that requires high levels of mobility at the hip, the ankle, and the upper back, which sometimes as a rugby player you may be neglecting. So one of the easy ways that we like to supplement some of the other benefits that we get from Olympic lifting and our technical coordination movements is deep tier plyos. So this is something that you can throw in as part of a prep to lift series or in your power block, where we just focus on building that ability to absorb force in those deep end ranges, whether that's done in a split stance, whether that's done bilateral, or whether that's done unilateral. Those deep tier plyos you can throw in as a little bit of a prep series if you can't get into those end ranges, where you can just work power snatches. And the goal is to be able to snatch 85% of your best clean and jerk. Exercise number 8 on the list is going to be the incline bench press. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, because I was stuck at a plateau for years. I could not break 170 kilos on the bench press. No matter how many bench press cycles I ran, I just couldn't creep up to that 4-plate bench, which is what I was chasing. And it wasn't until I was introduced to Stefan Cassel and the one golden rule that he uses in his programming: a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And for me, the incline was my weak link in the chain. You see, angles above help the angles below when it comes to pressing. And I was hitting a 170 kilo bench press, but I wasn't up to standard on the incline. I was stuck at 110. And it wasn't until I hit 130 kilos on the incline and prioritized this movement that my bench press PR'd as well. And I can guarantee, if you went out there and hit the standard that we're going to give you in this video on the incline bench, your bench press would improve as well. And that standard is 91% of your best bench press on the incline press. We want to make sure that we keep a similar grip width and go all the way down to the chest. The goal is to make sure that we're prioritizing strength through the full joint range that we have access to the shoulder, and that is going to allow you to build strong and durable shoulders. And this is normally the missing link in the chain when it comes to your upper body training. Plus, you get a meaty pump too. And if you think about it, incline is another predominant angle that you'll find in your sport. No rugby strength standards video here on planet Earth would be complete without exercise number 9 and 10 on the list. And they're going to be everyone's favorite, the back squat and the bench press. Now, we call these the mother lifts. And the reason why we do that is because we use these lifts to compare back to all the other exercises that we've spoken in this video. We use these to derive the ratios for what you should hit on the other exercises. And the reason why we do that is because these exercises are the most widely researched. You go into any research paper that looks at rugby strength, and if there's a lower body paper, it's going to use the back squat. If there's an upper body paper, it's going to use the bench press. And that is because they have the highest ROI for the sport of rugby. But only if you train the other angles that we've looked at in this video. But we're going to give you the standards. Now, as this is a strength video, we're going to be giving you the level 4 standards that we chase at the Strength Solution. And that for the back squat is 1.8 times your body weight. And for the bench press, that is 1.3 times your body weight. And we use those to work back to all the other numbers. So there we have it. There are the 10 exercises that I believe you need to have in your program and the targets that you need to hit if you want to be considered rugby strong. Now, the goal of this isn't for you to go overhaul your entire program and chase all these standards at once, because throughout this video, you may be thinking there's lifts that you've never done or a definitive weak link in the chain. And if you're not, I have created a free tracker. I have put my Maths A level to good use, so you don't have to do any of it. You need to head to the description, download the tracker, and pop the numbers that you have in. This will then relay all the numbers back to those mother lifts, like we said, and give you your weak link in the chain. And that should be your priority in the next program, closing the gap on the lift that you're weakest in to develop complete strength as an athlete. So head to the description, download the tracker, let me know what your weak lifts are, and I'll catch you for the next one.